Hello and welcome to this edition of SFG Top Performance Grain and Feed Podcast. This morning I'm going to wing it on my own. Mike had a prior commitment, and I will remind you that we are carrying a full range of calving supplies, albia and milo, clostridium, and some other things that you might need to get them calves off to a good start. The price of cattle right now, you sure don't want to let anything go by the wayside at all. They're also working on next year's creep pricing. They're not quite there yet, but that'll happen before you know it. And we think we're coming off the end of winter, which we hopefully are, but it won't be long. Those calves will be running around in the pasture there in July and needing something to eat. Grain markets, after being range bound for weeks, the grain markets have started moving. Unfortunately, it has been to the lower side of late. Corn exports continue to be poor. Some of the reasons include lack of foreign demand at this point. There's currently some cheaper corn out there. Ukraine's still trying to ship corn out. Brazil is working off the bottom of their bins from their first harvest of corn. So once some of that's cleared up, hopefully we'll see a return to the U.S. There's been rumors the last day or two that Chinese are finally interested in some U.S. corn, and this is the time of year when we typically make up for some exports. The next 3 months prior to the second crop corn in Brazil coming on. So hopefully we can correct some things there. The price differential between wheat and corn is too close. And when that happens, when you get less than $1 higher for wheat, or $1 lower for corn, whichever way you want to look at it, some of the feeding shifts to wheat. That makes it more advantageous. You're getting 4 more pounds in a higher protein product with wheat. So we're seeing that in the cattle yards out west. And there's always some off wheat somewhere in this country that needs to be fed. And so there again, they can garner some discounts on that, and they'll push that way. So anyway, we've lost 40-50 cents the last couple of weeks on the old crop corn. Getting a little bit of that back yesterday and today. Again, the rumors of the Chinese being interested is probably pushing. I think the other thing, we've kind of got some of the top out of the market as far as the funds. They've liquidated some of the guys that were getting a little nervous. We still got a long ways to go. The safrinha crop, that second crop in Brazil, is getting planted very slowly because the bean harvest is slow. And if you look at their weather compared to up here, it's kind of like planting corn in Texas. If you don't get it planted by the 1st of March, you're suspect to the hot, dry weather of the summer fill, and that's where they're at in the areas of Brazil that they'll be planting this corn. So it's important to them that they get it planted. It would help us if they get delayed a little farther. So we also have a long ways to go from getting our crop planted this spring to where we can say we've got a crop. And there are a lot of things can happen. The USDA at their Outlook conference last week, they predicted 91.5 million acres of corn will go in the ground this year. That compares to about 88.5 last year. So we'd be looking at 3 million more acres of corn, while on the bean side they're estimating we'll stay static at about 87.5 million acres. Typically, we see an acre war this time of year. You get into early March. That seems to be lacking this year on the new crop prices. Beans, aren't terrible. They're local wise. They're still in the upper 12s, almost 13. They've been over 13 for quite a while. But corn never has shown great promise, and so we're struggling to stay in the 530, 540 range, where I think a lot of guys was hoping to start at 575 and see some $6 new crop corn. But until we encounter a problem with planting season or some other oddball deal, I'm afraid we're going to continue to struggle there. Back on the beans, the old crop beans have kind of held their own on the board. They're lost a little steam, but where we're seeing a drawback is the basis levels. A lot of interior plants have fulfilled their needs for the next 30, 45 days, so they've backed off their bids. The crush is still very profitable, but we're not seeing the $4 a bushel margins they saw in the last 6 months. So we're still way above normal, but they're not going to step out of bounds here at this point and offer more. Part of that's due to the declining veg oil prices in the whole world. That thing can be erratic, and right now we're on a downside just a little bit compared to where we were. So going forward the next month, let's say old crop wise, I think we continue to watch for some rallies. A lot of guys was looking at $7 corn. Now I think we're going to have to look at $6.50, $6.60, and possibly be the sell points for a local delivered price. Not saying we can't get to $7, but it's going to take some huge export business and a possible problem with the planting of this year's crop. New crop wise, again, watch for some opportunities. There could still be a little bit of push on the acres. The bean market might draw some acres away. Planting $13 beans to a lot of guys is better than $5.25 corn. The inputs are less, and sometimes the yield risk is less, especially if you get down in our neck of the woods. So there would be some places to watch. However, the opportunities can be very short-lived. So I think again that bodes well for having a marketing plan and being prepared to make use of that when the time occurs. Farmers in general, and I have to include myself at times. We set a goal, but we get there and the greed kicks in. Maybe I want a dime more or 20 cents more. And more times than not, we fall back. So, stick with your plan and market that crop. Let's get it out of the bin, get it moved down the road. This will wrap up today's edition of the podcast. Appreciate you tuning in. One quick thing I will touch on. The Iowa truck weight law that was passed last year is where we could buy a $500 permit and a 5-axle truck. You could haul 90,000 year round. 6 and 7 axle trucks were also given a 12% bump, taking the 7-axle trucks up to 107,520 pounds. That program has kind of hit a bunch of snags, and I would recommend prior to going out and buying these permits, you do a little investigative work. The legislature is attempting to fix some of the problems right now. Hopefully they'll get that done. But the biggest problem today, all state roads are eligible for this. So if you're on a state highway, you're fine. Counties and cities have had the opportunity to delay approving this for all roads through July of 2025. So that means if you're living on a county pavement, you may not be legal to put that 90,000 or those bigger loads on the bigger trucks to get to the state highway. Again, hopefully we'll see some resolution there, but I think it'd be smart to ask some questions, call the DOT if you need to check out the current basis on that before you rush out and buy that $500 permit and then find out you can't use it everywhere you need to travel. Thank you for tuning in.